Oh, good morning. Flint's News Talk, 1470 WFNT. Welcome to Dan Land. Dan Foley, Sherman Mays here with you as always. Special guest in studio with us. This is your first time in studio with us. It's our second time talking, but we set up a phone interview with you. Scott Smith, formerly of Water Defense.
Dan, it's absolutely great to be here, and I've turned down numerous requests from national media because this is an important story after 3 years. Now that I can start talking about things, that this discussion starts in Flint.
Well, it does. I mean, Flint was ground zero, and you came here in January of 2016, right?
Correct.
Testing water, coming here on weekends. Give us a little background on how this all got started for you.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say that nothing but respect for Mark Ruffalo and everyone that has worked with Water Defense. And the brief background, because there's so much noise out there. Water Defense accomplished some really, really great things. We worked to, the Bakken oil train explosions. You don't see those anymore. Some of the work with Water Defense helped influence that and change some rules. And also using oil water to irrigate crops in California. We collaborated with a lot of great other tax-exempt organizations or nonprofits. And when we came into Flint, it was the first time in premise plumbing. So I just want to be clear that, when I came into Flint, I assumed that all nonprofits or tax-exempt organizations were working like, Water Defense, and that clearly wasn't the case.
So you came here at the request of who? Group of citizens?
A group of citizens, a variety of citizens reached out to Water Defense, and Water Defense called me and said, you want to go into Flint? And
so were you already affiliated with Water Defense before this?
Yeah, I want to give you some background. So in 2013, I was in Mayflower, Arkansas for an ExxonMobil pipeline spill doing some initial work, and Mark Ruffalo saw me on a news clip on YouTube, and he reached out to me. So I'd started, Mark and I met in person the first time in October of 2013. So we started working together on a variety of water issues and did a lot of great work between 2013 through 2016.
Okay, and your background is what? Your personal background?
Before
what you got with Water Defense?
Before I got with Water Defense, I owned a company involved in technology and patents related to plastics, foam plastics. I had a company that made biodegradable yoga mats or, shoes, a host of whole other issues. And again, my detailed story is on the guest blog on Flint Water Study, goes into all the background. And I know we have limited time here,
sure,
but my whole life was wiped out in oil contaminated floodwaters. Hence, that's why I became obsessed and passionate about water issues.
And when you originally, so the water bug, which is one of the tools that you were using to test water here in Flint, that was designed originally after that disaster. And you were thinking originally that was for cleanup potentially?
The original water bug, when I was working in the Gulf of Mexico, several scientific organizations worked out, and BP had endorsed the open cell foam for oil spills. They said, Scott, listen, water testing, they just take a grab sample from the surface. You can track exposure over time. You should start working on that. So I started, the water bug's intent was to identify contaminants, the presence of contaminants. And this was all detailed and ad nauseum over and over again throughout the Flint thing, but we had a hard time getting people to listen to the facts. And the water bug itself was designed in California to throw over a fence with a fishing rod. Mark Ruffalo actually came up with the name. I got a fishing rod, threw it over a fence when we were testing oil contaminated oil discharge water, oil wastewater that was used to irrigate organic produce. That's what that water bug was. And then when we got the calls and Water Defense wanted me to come into Flint, I took my experience from all these other places, obviously, made some mistakes, and that's well documented, but we also did, many good things too in our work.
So, and this is Dr. Edwards going to be with us tomorrow from Virginia Tech, and he called out some of the practices of your testing. There was a statement made by Bob Bocock and others who were talking about the problems with the water with regard to showering and bathing, right? And took issue with that, and took issue with the Aquaflex filter. And
there's no such thing as an Aquaflex filter.
okay,
False allegation.
Okay.
Completely false. And again,
So-
the Flint Water Study blog post, because we live in an age where people want the quick hit on Twitter or Facebook. And if you read the Flint Water Study post, it clearly spells out the mistakes I made on interpretation of the data. And I apologize,
Right.
you know, and
Right,
my
right,
intent
right.
was never to scare. But it also, if you take the left on the mistakes and put on the right, and put false allegations there, and confusion in facts, that CNN was part of too, you'll see that, you know, it's not, you know.
How did the filter thing come on? I don't even understand how that became a thing. There was a Facebook post or something, right, about something?
There was a Facebook post, and
Yeah.
you know, I shared it. I didn't look at it. I was sympathetic to the Flint residents. You know, that's well documented. But I want to step back to where we are. And one of the things that Mark Ruffalo said to me, you know, I did a lot of public things with him, and he says, you know, there comes a point in time where if you need positive change and move things forward, you're going to have a difficult discussion and make people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that's what this is going to happen today, but it's going to be done in a respectful way. And had I really regret, in Dr. Edwards, my first conversation with him ever was on June 15th, 2018. And in the first 10 minutes, I made more progress with him than almost anybody else from the nonprofit world.
Yeah.
And I knew that, I mean, I should have listened to my instinct and followed up when, you know, for a variety of reasons, I was told, oh, you know, don't talk. Had I reached out to him in 2006, a lot of needless drama could have been avoided.
Yeah, because I know that he'd reached out to Water Defense early on, April of 2016, and he's got a paper coming out. We're going to talk a little bit about that. I think it's scheduled to be published this Friday. And he talked about reaching out about the bathing issue, and I know that there were people who were telling you that this is something that could be an issue. I never understood the notion of the bathing, because I always thought, you know, with you know, if people who swim in lakes, obviously there's bacteria. If you swim in a swimming pool and you chlorinate it, you're going to have byproduct, right? I never got how, you know, the water could be doing that. So, and he wanted to reach out and do a teleconference with some of the folks from Water Defense, not with you. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I was told to stay out of it. I wanted to talk to him, and again, I accept full responsibility, and I'm here today. If one person listening to me as I start to talk about this in the news, if I save one other person from going through what I went through,
Yeah.
then
It was very
I've accomplished
contentious.
something.
It was a
But well, you know, I wanted to reach, and then when you roll forward to 2017, we'll get into that, and you're going to say, you say the Jussie Smollett thing. How does that relate to what I went through? Well, we'll save that for a later segment. I can explain that.
All right, we're gonna talk about that. We've got an interesting video. That is one of the things that you know, it's a focus of Edwards' paper too, and I know it's a focus of the documentary that Anthony Baxter is shooting. We've got folks in here filming this as well, trying to finish it up. We talked to these guys early on. I think it was 2015 I think it was in September or October of 2015. And they're putting the final touches on their documentary. They want to be able to film Scott and talk to you, I know, as an integral part of all this. And but trust is a huge issue, and it is in this paper too. That's about citizen science, and that's really kind of what you were trying to do and work with others. And it's what Edwards did early on, working with citizens, because we were ground zero. The people who identified the problem were people who were using the product, who were using the water, right? And they needed help in testing for this. And that's what you were here to do. That's what Dr. Edwards was here to do.
This is a very important point. Let's talk about the timeline real quick, if you're
Sure.
permit me.
Right, go right ahead.
Timeline. I arrive on January 29th of 2016 at the request of the residents. Water Defense sends me out here to be here like any other disaster I went into with Water Defense for a week or two.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know I ended up spending 12 weekends, you know, meeting plumbers
You were
and
here a
pipe
lot,
fitters, which was great.
right.
I didn't know this would forever change my life.
Yeah.
So I want to say, so March 7th, Green for All, Van Jones, Tom Steyer, you know, reach out to Water Defense, Mark Ruffalo, organized. You've seen that video,
Yeah.
the inside with Dan Kildee, with the Senate leader.
Yep.
And it's a very telling video. And, you know, so that started the narrative. So, and then that's one point in time. We can come back to that later. March 14th. Bob Bocock, Aaron Brockovich, I met in this
Yep.
process. I consider them my friends, always will be.
Yep.
Just like, you know, Mark Ruffalo will always be a friend, and I'd do anything to help him because he really does mean well. And
Well,
he
you
didn't
can
take
tell
a
from
penny.
that- you
So,
can
but
tell from
March,
that video.
but back to this, March 14th, 2006. Bob Bocock and Dr. Marilyn McPherson Corder, and this is everything I'm saying is on the Flint Water Study blog I did.
Yep.
March 14th, they go on Steve Harvey, okay? Bob Bocock, as a water expert, 40 years, very knowledgeable guy, great guy.
Yep.
Quote, you got to understand you cannot be bathing in the water.
Yep.
So I meet him, I start speaking, and Water Defense was careful. Everything I ever said was approved by PhD scientific advisors.
Right.
My fault. And again, I am not here to blame anybody but
Yeah,
myself.
we're just
because
laying the
I'm
background.
explaining my thought process for
Yeah.
that one person that might be listening to this, and I can
Yeah.
prevent them from going through what I went through.
Yep.
So I'm explaining my thought process. So I'm losing, and what I realized coming out of that, the burden, I take full responsibility. I should have not listened to anybody else and reached out to the subject matter expert, Mark Edwards, and dealt with him right away, because the testing that I did with the EPA, it is the interpretation of the data.
Yep, and where you're sampling, and this is one of the things we've talked about too. You know, there's very specific parameters for identifying levels of lead in water. You've got to meet these guidelines to do that. But you're testing for other things. You're testing from other sources, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as you're upfront about this is what we're doing. This is what we're finding in the water. Those may be relevant as well. It's just that they don't go towards the lead and copper rule and identify.
Let me. This is my most important, one of the more important statements on my Flint Water Study blog. This is a quote from my writing. Based on my experience in Flint, my strong opinion is that we need professional, respectful, and productive dialogue with more research with proper scientific review surrounding potential human exposure, especially those that are immunocompromised in hot water to microbial contaminants and volatile chemicals. Currently, there are no regulations nor standards for hot water and contaminants in water. Perhaps it is time to have this discussion and consider whether regulations or standards should be changed.
Let me ask you
that
this.
is key when you
Right.
really want to understand.
No, exactly. Let me ask you this: how does that relate to like hot tubs, chlorinated hot tubs?
Well,
I mean, that's big soup with that kind of stuff in it, isn't it?
hot tubs, and this
Have
this
they
goes
tested
to,
it?
You know, and the positive is that you see me wearing the plumbers and pipe fitters.
Yeah.
Nothing but respect for the organization from the president. We did a testing program, and you'll never read about it in the media, but I'm working with them on sampling procedures throughout the country.
Yep.
And you bring up hot tubs. The reason is nursing homes, big buildings. People are getting sick, and I taught, and sometimes people have Legionella. It gets misdiagnosed as pneumonia, and we
Obviously, a big issue here.
But yeah, and again, you rely on the subject matter. All I'm focused on is some new sampling devices that get used in conjunction, and we've got getting it peer reviewed, scientific process. So some really good things came out. But once you get involved with the media,
it was always at that point. It was the disaster had just been declared prior to your arrival, federal emergency, right? FEMA's involved at that point too. So a lot of people showing up, and we're going to talk about some of this too. I want to talk with you about some of the other people that are involved. I want to talk about the the lawsuits and so forth. There's a lot of different people, and trust is a big issue. This is one of the things that Edwards talks about as well. You have a situation where the people here in Flint lost trust because of what they did. The EPA, the MDEQ, these people didn't deal straight with the citizens of Flint when they made this change to the Flint River, right? They used cheats when they were doing sampling. Edwards comes in and shows that this is wrong from the samples that he does with, they did a huge 269 house sample early on. That's what got the wheels rolling. The disaster's declared. They're sampling other houses. They do the series of 4. The water starts to get better in 2016. That's according to all the folks who are doing the testing. That's Edwards. That's your stuff is consistent with this as well, correct?
Yeah, we
with
saw them
respect to
with
the
our,
lab,
and again,
with the EPA.
We did conventional grab sampling, and even from, again, this gets into and again, I defer to Mark Edwards to correct me and anybody, but it's lead and copper rule regulations are the cold tap water.
Right.
It does not mean the grab samples we took from other locations are invalid. That data stands,
Right.
but it's interpretation because there aren't regulations.
Right.
And even the EPA was testing outside the lead and copper rule, and my
Yep.
data is consistent.
Right.
And we saw an improvement from now. We weren't here at the time of Dr. Edwards and
Right.
all the residents.
Yep.
From I can speak to the data that
Yep.
we accumulated at Water Defense with the Plumbers Union. We saw an improvement even with our testing.
So you've got a problem, though, because you've got folks who have lost the trust of the citizens because they lied to people, right? They lied to people. These are the folks who should have been providing the information to begin with. MDEQ, EPA, that's frontline. They're supposed to be testing. They're supposed to say that this is going to be okay. You can use this Flint River water, and they didn't. And that's what we found out. So it's difficult. These people can't come out now and say, well, the water's better, and they're reluctant to do so, right? Because people don't believe them because they've lost the credibility of the people. When the video that you shared about the folks meeting with Dr. Monahan Atisha, Mark Ruffalo's there, Van Jones is there, Tom Steyer's there. You've got Congressman Kildee, you've got Senator Ananek, all these folks who are coming to see this. This is in 2017, and they're telling people, or is it 2016?
That was March 7th of 2016.
2016.
That's a bus tour, and Anthony Baxter was there filming. That's where I first met Anthony on the bus. Right, Anthony?
All right, so they're here. They're here in March, and they're telling people. So they've put together a panel. You're going to have Monahan Atisha on it. You're going to have Virginia Tech on it. You're going to have the folks who are. They're trying to bring in the people who exposed this to say these are the people who are going to be on this panel to do it. And you've got all these folks. Van Jones, who's just come into town, Ruffalo, Steyer. You can't trust the blue panel, the blue ribbon panel. You can't trust these people. That's what they're doing at that point, right? That's what it shows.
That's right. And again, in defense of Mark Ruffalo, he was talking about fracking in New York State and some things that went on. And he, from his perspective, he was from his perspective and experience, he was correct.
So you've got this loss of trust, and the question is, who do you trust and what do you turn to? And I know with Edwards is you've got to trust the science. You've got to be able to trust the science, and especially when, and this is the thing with you, and this I really think was where marked the end for you, trying to figure it out, work with citizens still. You're called in, they're wanting to get answers from you. You've got Harold Harrington and Ben Ranger.
UA 370.
So they've gone out and they're doing some testing for you under your direction, and they're at a house, citizen's house, and what do they find?
Lead sinkers up a bathroom spigot.
Now, how did they find that?
They went out to a resident's home, and again, that was free from me and the UA.
Yeah.
That was personal. Scott Smith paid for it to help. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
You get a resident that is calling, you're going to try to help.
Right.
And I remember Ben Ranger called my cell phone 15 times in a row. He never does that. Text message. I stepped out of a meeting. I know where I was standing. They said, "You're not going to believe this. We found lead sinkers up a spigot." I'm involved in 20 different patents. I do collaborate. I am involved, and I do things properly. I really do. And there was no hesitation. I immediately had them, send me the video, and I sent it to Mark Durner at the EPA and contacted, Michigan DEQ, because those lead sinkers, and again, I'm not ever going to make any false allegations, because all I can say for sure, Ben Ranger, Scott Smith, and Harold Harrington had nothing to do with those lead sinkers.
Yep.
And we're not, and I'm never, ever going to accuse anybody of anything. All we can say is we don't know how they got there.
Yeah. But they're there, and that's a problem. And that's a problem that obviously is going to throw off the testing, right? It can lead to false positives, to say the least. And
it may or may not. We did some testing that day, and I've sent and then I think Mark Edwards did some other testing. So I mean, it depends on what goes on. I don't know. I defer to the experts.
So but the point is, this is out of the ordinary. This is unusual. You go and you say, I've got to share this with other people. What was the reaction on the part of the person you tested for and other folks who were having you do testing? What was their reaction to your doing that?
And again, I'm not here to. I will never, ever, ever falsely accuse people like I have.
I'm not asking you to.
But again, there were a lot of people upset with me for sending it to the EPA.
Why?
But
Why
my
were they
whole
upset?
my whole reputation would have been at stake. Well, you know, and then a theory was suggested, and that's when Ben Harold and I, that, you know, George Christian went to the house and put the lead sinkers up there secretly.
Who is
George is the DEQ. Now, I've sat and participated. You know, as
they were suggesting
as
you put
we
it in
evolved, I started. The DEQ invited me to some meetings.
Okay.
With residents, and I started working with Mark Durno.
Yeah. He's with DEQ or with EPA?
George
DEQ.
Christian is with DEQ. Now, Mark Durno and George, we need people like that working for the state. And Ben Harold and I were, you know, there's no way, you know,
You're going to be part of
I
that.
wanted to be part of accusing the DEQ.
Yeah.
And knowing, I just simply, you know,
because you don't know.
No one knows. I mean, and I didn't.
Do they have evidence? Did anybody have evidence that this is something that he did?
All I know is the state of Michigan launched an investigation, and we don't know. You know, Harold turned over the sinkers, and it doesn't. You know,
I saw on Facebook people suggesting that this was designed to reduce credibility of the resident who was being tested, and I was like, reduce credibility? That's an assault. Lead in water is a dangerous thing. If somebody did that, that's not reducing credibility. That's assault, and it should be treated as a criminal matter. And the police should be called, right?
Yes, and again, no one can put themselves in their position of the Flint residents, me or anybody else. They lost trust. They're angry. They're upset. You can't blame them for any of that ever, and if they never trust anybody again. And that's one of the things I regret, that I made some mistakes about bathing and showering, and that's the last thing I wanted to do.
Sure, and I'm not saying you had anything to do with it or whatever.
No,
I have no idea. I just read the reports. But if you want to build trust in who's ever doing the testing, whichever group is doing it, you wouldn't do something like that. That would actually work to diminish the trust, to prove almost a political point, don't you think?
Correct.
Because there was a lot of political accusations floating around at the time.
Everything everybody can agree on is there's no reason for lead sinkers being up a bathtub spigot.
Exactly.
Period.
Yeah.
That everybody can agree on.
Strange thing. Yeah. Listen, let's take a break because I want to move on, and it's good to go through this stuff and I like laying this out in terms of trust because it's so important. It was lost. The people who were in charge here destroyed it. It made the citizens not able to trust them, absolutely. But there are other people who are doing things that contribute to that, and it can be citizens too. It can be citizens, it can be other people from the nonprofit world. Or
Dan, don't you ever say that in front of me. I'm going to throw tax-exempt corporations. There's no such thing as a nonprofit, and we're going to get into that. Okay, I'm very passionate about that.
Okay, one more real quick thing, just to clear a point. You said when you first talked to Bob Bocock, I think you said in 2006. Did you mean 2006 or 2016?
Thank you, Sherman. Good catch. 2016.
Yeah.
And again, and Bob Bocock was, you know, when he says, he gets my attention, he's an expert. He's got credibility.
We interviewed him.
He says, do not bathe in this water. But again, even with the PhDs in water defense, we said we don't know whether it's unsafe to safe. We were not playing a game as we were accused of. We didn't know.
Oh, no.
But we had an expert saying that.
Yeah. Right.
And,
yep. I remember when
there's a video of it, and then.
When he first came to town, I remember.
Then we at Water Defense ended up getting vilified for it.
Absolutely. When he first came to town, I remember, you know, I met him informally. He wouldn't remember me if he had to, but I remember him talking about things like that and whatnot. And I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. You're good. I gotta work with you more often to correct mistakes I make.
That's why I'm here. That's why they pay me the large dollars.
So we had Bocock in too. I just want to say he was one of the first guys saying that the way that they were treating the water when we switched over to the Flint River, before he was saying you can't do that. So he questioned the study that said that they were on track. And he told them they were going to have problems if they didn't treat this water. Early on, if they'd listened to him, they'd avoided a lot of trouble as well. We're going to take a break. We'll come right back. We're going to go into the what is it? The tax-exempt corporations. Is that the terminology?
Yes.
We'll talk about tax-exempt corporations.
Yes, we are.
Just like the church, right?
Oh yeah, churches are tax-exempt corporations.
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.